Hello there. Welcome back to Storytime with Mr. Lawrence, and I must confess that I am very excited about today's story because I get to talk about one of my all-time favorite plays, Antigone. Now, Antigone, as you may recall, is the third play of Sophocles' Oedipus cycle, and it has to deal with Oedipus's youngest daughter, Antigone, and the journey and the trials that she must go through in order to do what she feels is right in her heart. It is an incredibly complex play. I know a lot of people say that Oedipus is the greatest work of the ancient Greeks and the greatest work of Sophocles. I would humbly disagree. I believe Antigone is far more complex and far more interesting. And we're going to hear about what this play is about, as well as some of the after effects that this play has caused throughout history. I love talking about this play. I've directed it several times, and I am really looking forward to sharing it with you. So let's not mince words. Let's begin, as we did with Oedipus, with the prologue, all the information that happened before the action of the play, so that we know exactly what is going on. Here we go. After the events of Oedipus, it was decided that his two sons, Antigone and Polynices, would share the throne. In a plan that would absolutely never backfire, it was decided that after Oedipus's death, that the two sons would share the throne, each to rule over Thebes in alternating years. But when Antigone, the elder son, had reigned for a full year, he refused to step down and yield up the throne to his younger brother. Who could have predicted this obvious betrayal besides everyone? This, of course, led to a civil war, and in the course of the battle, the two brothers fought and killed each other in single combat just outside the city walls. With both sons dead, that leaves the throne of Thebes in the hands of Creon, Oedipus's brother-in-law. It's important to note that this is not a position that Creon ever desired. However, he is a man of action and takes on the job to the best of his abilities, now tasked with healing a kingdom torn apart by civil war. Creon issues a solemn edict that Antigone, with whom he had sided, is to be buried with pomp and honors, and that Polynices' body is to be left to rot. Vultures and dogs are to bloat themselves on his carcass. Nobody is to go into mourning for him. No gravestone is to be set up into his memory. And above all, any persons who attempt to give him a religious burial will themselves be put to death. All right, everybody caught up on the premise? Everybody know what's going on? All right, so let's get right to it. Here comes the play proper. Here we go. Ismene, dear sister. This is where we meet Antigone, the youngest daughter of Oedipus. Antigone, despite knowing what Polynices was and the type of man that he was, cannot just let her brother's body lie out in the sun to rot. By the Greek belief system, a body that is not buried will never enter the afterlife, and the soul will just wander around limbo for all of eternity. Antigone, feeling this dedication to her family, goes out into the night and buries her brother. She is caught and she is brought before Creon, her uncle. What follows is a portion of the play that I lovingly refer to as the Land of 1,000 Monologues. The majority of this play is made up of a long debate between Antigone and Creon. What is really being debated here is the question of what is right for the individual versus what is right for the state. Creon argues that the people of Thebes need a scapegoat. They need someone to blame. They need a villain. And without one, the city would erupt into yet another civil war. Antigone argues that it doesn't matter what the city needs. Her brother needs to be buried, and she needs to honor him. An important thematic thing to note is that Antigone is actually the exact opposite of her father, despite Creon often accusing her of speaking with Oedipus's voice. Oedipus, as you may recall, fought against the will of the gods, believing that he could change the prophecy and thereby change fate. Antigone is accepting her fate. She did what she did with full knowledge of the consequences and is willing to accept them. It is Oedipus who is trying to fight the river and is ultimately going to be the one to lose. As is necessary in a Greek tragedy, Antigone's fate is sealed. The guards take her up to a cave and seal her inside. So it would seem that the tragedy of Antigone has come full circle. But there is more to come, and Creon has more of a price to pay for his inflexibility. Via a messenger, we are told that once inside the cave, Antigone met her fate and hung herself. However, hiding inside the cave was Antigone's boyfriend, Haman. And when he found Antigone dead, he took his own life. Why is this important to Creon? Because Haman was Creon's son, meaning that he was also Antigone's cousin because Creon was her uncle. I know. Don't try to understand it. The Oedipus family's genealogy has fewer branches on it than Charlie Brown's Christmas tree. Upon hearing of the death of her son, Creon's wife goes to her chambers and silently slits her own throat. And so Creon is left alone in the empty palace, left alone with the power that he fought to protect and the state that he fought so hard to preserve. He has no family left. All he has is his job. Only the guards are left, and none of this matters to them. With no skin off their noses, they go on playing cards. And that, my friends, is the story of Antigone. As I mentioned at the beginning, one of my all-time favorite plays. I believe that this is far more complex and interesting than Oedipus was. The story of a young girl. Antigone is not supposed to be that old, early to mid-teens, I would assume, who takes it upon herself to oppose an unjust law imposed on her by a tyrannical government and raising the question of what is right for the individual versus what is right for the state. It is one of the most important political works ever written and would in fact have its true importance shown not in ancient Greece but centuries later. In 1944, French playwright Jean Anouilh readapted Antigone. He wrote this play while he was living in Paris while it was under occupation by the invading Nazi forces. For years, this play, this version of Antigone, was one of the only plays that was allowed to be performed in Paris. And when you consider how strict the Nazis were with their censorship codes, you can see what an achievement this was. If you can imagine it, in one theater at the front of the house, sitting very close to the stage, you had high-ranking Nazi officers all cheering on the side of Creon, applauding him for his tireless dedication to the state, his willingness to sacrifice family and his own happiness to maintain the state. In other words, for being the embodiment of the fascist ideal. Meanwhile, sitting in the back of the house, in the very same theater, seeing the very same performance, members of the French resistance were watching and silently cheering Antigone, a young girl standing up against an oppressive government, fully realizing what the cost would be, but doing it anyway because it was right. So yes, if you have interest in this story, I highly recommend the Jean Anouilh adaptation. So thank you all for joining us, and come back next time for more Story Time with Mr. Lawrence. Have a good day.